Welcome to the Custom Smarts podcast, where you'll discover smarter ways to deliver customer experiences. I'm your host, Justin Stafford. Every time a new technology gets introduced, it creates new ways to interact with customers. In recent times, AI is flipping the world on its head. But we're also seeing progress with the spatial computing and 3D experiences space with devices like Apple Vision Pro. So I wanted to get a perspective on how these new technologies are changing the way we need to approach design. My guest in this episode, Oliver Weidlich, has been in the UX design space for a long time. Through all the major evolutions from designing for websites, to mobiles, to wearables, to the world of virtual and augmented reality, and now AI. He's worked with leading brands like Qantas, Optus, Atlassian, and Combank. So in this episode, we're going to dive into how technology is driving designers to design differently, creating three-dimensional experiences, designing for the AI age, and the future of design. Welcome, Oliver. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me.
I want to start by talking about some of your favourite pieces of UX design that you've seen or experienced. What is some of your favourite examples of all time?
I think the easy answer for me, given my interest in mobile from the early 2000s through today, is the iPhone. It was a new type of computing device, new interactions with a full touch screen, physics-based animations, and it really created this new way of mobile-first services, things like Uber and Instagram, that simply couldn't have happened without that type of device. And I think it even had a broader impact on the user experience industry that I'm in, and certainly my career and my interest in mobile UX, and really kicked off that what do customers want from their technology in a whole new way.
Yeah.
So that's the easy one in terms of a device.
Yeah.
But there's two others that I thought were really interesting that are actually from outside Australia, so people might not have seen them. The first one is actually on the iPhone, but in Japan, you can get a train card, essentially, called a Suica, or it's an IC card. You can pay for things at 7-Eleven and things like that. But the integration between the digital card on your phone and the terminals and the train experience is amazing. So, yeah, we're familiar now with tapping on with your phone or your watch or your card to get on the bus here in New South Wales. But this was sort of 5-6 years ago. And not only could you do that, but when you're actually on the train, it shows you how much balance you've got. It makes it really easy to top up that balance. And you can see how much the train journey is going to cost you, if you use the maps to find out where you're going. So it's this lovely little pieces of integration throughout the whole user experience of the journey that's really impressive. So that's another iPhone one. And another one that we'll probably talk about later is spatial computing. And my first experience with spatial computing was the HoloLens device from Microsoft about 8 years ago. But the one that really sort of shone was a device called the Magic Leap 1, sorry. So it came out around the same time. But it really, the design effort and consideration of the UI design and the UX design in that device was phenomenal. Famously, they got a lot of startup funding, and unfortunately, they're just in the final. They're sort of wrapping up and building headsets now. They got the Magic Leap 1, the Magic Leap 2, but now they're licensing that technology to Google. So it was an amazing spatial computing experience. The first one that really sort of thought about spatial computing as an operating system in a holistic way.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, some great examples there, that's for sure. And as these new technologies get introduced, sometimes people get caught up in the features and what the tech can do and design things that sometimes aren't necessarily solving a real user problem. So how do you ensure this doesn't happen and keep the user at the center of the design process?
Yeah, it's a great question. And technologies themselves have these paths to become the technology that they are. So if we look at mobile tech, it started very early on. Computing, obviously, the whole technology starting with mainframes and so on. and the different eras of computers that we've gone through. So often the tech is explored in and of itself first to see what it can do. But certainly as a UX designer and researcher, anything that we will want to do should be based on customer needs and behaviors. So when we look at a new technology, we think about it like a design material and think back to, that a deeper understanding of those customer needs and behaviors and say, how might this address those in a different way? Is there a way of enabling something that we simply couldn't do through a desktop computer or a mobile device or a watch that now makes more sense in this type of device? So, we've seen that with various technologies over the last sort of 20 years, especially whether it's kiosks, speech interfaces. It allows things to be done in a very different way for that customer. But what best meets those needs and behaviors of that customer is always the tricky question. And sometimes we need to explore that, right? We need to reassess those needs and behaviors and go, okay, what might this allow now?
Yeah. And what are some of your favorite user insight moments or stories when testing some of these concepts? You get those little light bulb moments where you're in a session testing with users and you start to go, oh yeah, that's really interesting, or anything surprising or things like that.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to conduct thousands of probably up to thousands. It's been 25 years now of usability testing sessions and customer research sessions. I think one of the most significant ones is when we move between cultures. And so we got the opportunity to go up to Indonesia and work on essentially a personal health medical record. And we started off doing research with women who were pregnant in Indonesia and specifically Jakarta. And so we got the opportunity to go up there and meet with the clinicians, meet with the women, meet with the University of Indonesia to the nursing faculty there, and try to understand that pregnancy journey for women who are pregnant. And what we found were two things. The first one that we just, we weren't aware of, especially as outsiders coming into Indonesia, was that there tended to be, if you're a middle-class woman in Indonesia, you might have had a relationship with a clinic, a local clinic, a Puskesmas is what they're called up there. And you would go at the start of your pregnancy and you would monitor and track your pregnancy with them. So you would have this ongoing dialogue, and a lot of it was mobile mediated. So it might have been like a WhatsApp with your clinician as well. There was a communication there. But just before the woman gave birth, or a couple of months before the woman gave birth, the bit we didn't know was that they often returned to their mother's village where their mother was living, so their mother could take care of them. And what that meant was that there was essentially this break in the continuity of care that they'd been getting. They couldn't go to the local Puskesmas anymore. And so it was this really interesting insight, and it gave us more ability to service those needs and support that woman who might have gone home to her mother's village where maybe they still did things in traditional ways that maybe science has now changed a perspective on and things like that. So that was really interesting to see, to get that understanding of a local cultural aspect that resonated. And, we not only did the pregnant woman's journey, but ultimately it turned into a medical records hub for the whole family. And that woman, being the mother of potentially a couple of children, not only monitored her own health records through this app, her children's health records through this app, her husband's health records through this app, but traditionally they might have lived with her husband's parents as well. So she was really their health records hub. And those are the things that you only really can understand when you go in and get closer to the culture and those needs and behaviours that you're trying to address.
Yeah, and you've obviously been in the UX design space for a long time, like you mentioned, through all the major evolutions from designing for websites to designing for mobile and designing for wearables, and now the world of augmented reality headsets, and you've also got AI, making things changing it up as well. What are some of the key evolutionary changes that you've had to make as a designer along the way?
I think about it in firstly the eras of computing, right? And so, prior to me coming into the industry, we had mainframes where it was a very high level of expertise that was needed to interact with a computer, took up a whole room, used punch cards to interact with it, et cetera, et cetera. Then we moved to the command line, and that's when my sort of first interaction with computers started. Then we got the graphical user interface with the Macintosh. And over that period, we also got enabled by the internet. So while we were using the same devices, that level of enablement of the internet really changed what we could do with those devices through communication and sharing content, and of course, ultimately the World Wide Web, etc. Then we got to the smartphone, obviously, with iPhone and Android, and suddenly we can take a computer everywhere. It's got specific things that it can do, GPS, full screen, cameras, etc. enabled that. And now what I see is we're moving to this era of spatial computing. And to me, that's the next era of computing beyond mobile. And again, it comes back to similarly to how we moved from mobile to from desktop to mobile. Sorry, we now have to rethink what we can do with these types of devices. So for us, it's understanding the technology, understanding why it's different in terms of interaction design or broader user experience, and then trying to leverage the strengths of those of this new type of experience. With mobile, we had mobile first, and mobile's still not a solved problem. Like, not every mobile app you use really leverages the benefits of that particular device. And we're kind of moving, even now, mobile's evolving to this, what we're terming the post-app world, where it's actually not all about people going into a mobile app, but bubbling content up to them on the screen of their device, or maybe even through, an intelligent agent allowing me to access contextually, based interactions and things like that. So we're seeing the same thing with spatial computing, where we need to take those needs and behaviors, but leveraging why these devices are different. And that's especially so for spatial computing.
Yep. And then I guess as a designer, how have you had to change? Obviously, you've gone from almost designing in 2D and then mobile, created all those location-based technology capabilities. Like I say, it's not always getting utilized. You see a lot of just 2D basic mobile apps, don't you? And then now we've got this world in 3D. How do you have to change your design approach?
Yeah, the key thing for me is, or the opportunity is with spatial computing, and maybe I'll just step back a bit and sort of clarify what I'm talking about when I say spatial computing. We talk about, there was a guy called Milgram who created this, what we call the continuum of virtual reality or virtuality. And it sort of goes from virtual reality, where you put a headset on and you are fully immersed in an experience, right through to an augmented reality where you're looking at the physical world and overlaying content, digital content, on that physical world experience. And spatial computing is almost a subset of augmented reality, where not only are you overlaying content, digital content, on the physical world, but that the actual device understands the space that you're in, the spatial aspect. So that there's a wall next to me, there's a ceiling above me, there's a desk in front of me, there's a chair there as well. And therefore that the computer essentially can interplay with the physical world around you because it knows about those objects, and through, computer vision or technologies like LiDAR, which scan the room, can actually, make something roll off a desk, right? So the digital ball rolls off the physical desk. So when we get this interaction between the digital world and the physical world, it's really, it's amazing. You can do a whole bunch of new types of experiences where you can engage content in a different way. Spatial computing also allows us to be more multimodal. So not only can I use my hands for gestures to pinch on things and to move things around or to grab things, I can also use my voice to interact with that content, to open up apps, or to change the way that I'm engaging with that content. and even right through to now with devices like the Apple Vision Pro to actually use my eye gaze where my pupil is looking is actually tracked. And therefore that becomes the navigation method. So I might look at an icon and then pinch with my hand to activate that icon. But I don't need to reach out physically and actually pinch the icon in the space, which allows us to do a whole bunch of different things. So it's all these different elements together, which can create these very different experiences. So things like screen space become virtually unlimited. Right? I can put as many screens around me as I want because there's no physical limit. I can bring my computer screen up into my augmented reality, my spatial computing world, and have it in front of me and interact with it using that. It's very private. Nobody else can see what I'm doing, and so on. So there's a bunch of stuff that really makes us as UX researchers and designers reassess what opportunities we've got to create digital experiences.
Yep. Yeah, cool. And then I guess from a device point of view, it seems like cracking that headset device has been a really hard, tough nut to crack for the major tech players. We've seen Google Glass, Oculus, in the past, and you mentioned a couple there. And obviously the Apple Vision Pro is sort of a big focus at the moment. How is Apple Vision Pro different from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So to talk about the two devices that you talked about, the Google Glass. So Google Glass was sort of a very simple heads-up display. It overlaid some digital content, had a bit of a sense of where you were through GPS, but it wasn't a spatial computer in the sense that it didn't understand the physical space around you. Same with the Oculus devices up until the Oculus Quest 3, which now has pass-through and can do some of those things. And as I mentioned, the spatial computing ones with HoloLens and Magic Leap. What's different between those and the Apple Vision Pro is, as Apple tends to do, it sort of makes a more holistic user experience. So in terms of that, I'm talking about those things that I just mentioned in terms of interaction. So gesture is really is better on the Apple Vision Pro. I can pretty much have my hands anywhere in front of me because it's got cameras on the headset pointing everywhere to see my gestures. Whereas traditionally with the HoloLens and Magic Leap, you had to have your arm up and make the gesture in front of the cameras that were in front of you. So that becomes really tiring when you've got to keep your hand up. But I can just have my hand on the desk or on my lap and make those gestures, and it's still understood. The voice recognition, Siri enablement is quite good. And I don't know whether it's because the microphones in the headset are much closer to your mouth or it's a different software edition, but Siri seems a lot better on, and of course all my devices just triggered, on the Apple Vision Pro. And then you've got things like the eye gaze for navigation. So that's quite new and really powerful to be able to look at something, a digital object in that world, and to be able to interact with it that way. Then you've got things like resolution. So the device is significantly higher than most previous headsets. So it's sharper and clearer. The images look better. There's a good field of view, especially compared to devices like the HoloLens and Magic Leap, because it uses a different technology. And then it's got its own spatial computing operating system that is quite powerful. And one of the key things around that operating system is that it brings in all your content from the Apple ecosystem. So, with a HoloLens, you essentially had to go and get a whole new bunch of apps. Your photos weren't there, but now you put on the Vision Pro, you connect it to your Apple ID if you're in the Apple ecosystem. And of course, your photos are there, your TV shows are there, your emails there, your calendar's there, all your content from your ecosystem is immediately there. And then what I think is one of the really smart things they've done is they've allowed iPad apps to be used in the Vision Pro. So I might use Notion on my iPad and Slack on my iPad as day-to-day tools or on my Mac, but I can pop my Vision Pro on, and from day one, I've been able to use those applications. So instead of being a headset like the Oculus devices where you tend to put them on, go into a specific app, do a training exercise or play a game or use it for a vertical function, you can now put the Apple Vision Pro on, do the things that you normally do, computing, plus all this additional stuff in 3D, and have this fully immersive content experiences with videos and so on, and relive moments through spatial photos that have a 3D aspect to them, and so on. So it's really changed in a range of aspects, which by themselves might not be completely unique, but as we know Apple tends to do, puts them together in just the right way to make it a step change in experience for these types of devices.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the most interesting use cases you're seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I think when it first launched, we created a little app which sort of is a different way of visualizing your calendar, your day of what you've got on that day. So the calendar app in Vision Pro is like a full iPad app, and it's just a 2D screen. And we wanted to show how to rethink these types of experiences. So we created this application called Day Ahead, which is this beautiful looking 3D glass cube. It starts at the starting day, ends at the end of the day. You can set those times. And then along the tube, you've got these little bubbles, which are visualizations of your meetings. And so you can get a quick sense of, oh, that's where I'm up to in the day. We've got a ring that shows you where you are along that tube. We've got the clock there, so you can see what time it is. And then you can say, oh, I've only got 2 more meetings this afternoon, and they're like right in the afternoon. Or, wow, I've got a day full of meetings. So that's how we rethought those types of things. And we've got a little battery utility as well, 3D again. And we saw a lot of this type of stuff, a lot of iOS developers who are bringing apps across from iPhone and so on. And some of them were pushing the boundaries, some of them weren't so much. They were just 2D things. I think we've seen great leaps in the immersive video. So sports, like they did an NBA dunk contest, and it feels like you're really there in court side at this dunk contest. But where we see things is not so much on the entertainment side or those little apps side. We see more opportunity in the short term, coming back to the cost of this device, etc., in the enterprise space. And I don't think the market is as aware of those things. We hear a lot of the narrative is, Vision Pro is not selling well. There's nothing really happening. There's not much on the App Store, or there's nothing useful in the App Store. And because of my engagement with the community, I've had the opportunity to understand a lot of things that are going on in the enterprise space, to the point where I created Australia's first Vision OS event. We held it in Melbourne at the end of last month, 25th of October. We're about to hold one at the start of December in Sydney, where we're really trying to showcase all the enterprise projects that are happening in this space. So we've got ones that are looking at medical for lab technicians. There's been some amazing global ones around the medical space where a person called a scrub technician, who hands the tools to the surgeon, can bring up their operating manual for what tools the surgeon's going to want for this particular procedure, have them all ready, and look up the information about them and things like that through the procedure. We had Telstra Purple, the consultancy arm of Telstra, show an app which is all around situational awareness for flooding and fires, etc., for Energy Queensland. So you've got a 3D topographical map of the area in front of you. You've got data from drone footage coming in, maybe from live drones that are going around the site. You might have data about the temperature or the winds and things like that as well. So really highlighting those. And then we also had a company called Jigspace, which is like one of the children for Apple and the Apple Vision Pro, for building 3D models and making them educational and informative. And they actually brought one of their clients along to talk about how they use it for their clients. And one of the use cases they gave was, at a printing trade show, and we're talking magazine printing, where these machines are massive, like take up sort of 2 cars lengths in size. Instead of disassembling that machine, putting it on a truck, moving it to the expo location, reassembling it, and then reversing that whole procedure, they can put on an Apple Vision Pro and walk through that machine, like literally through that machine, to see how it operates. They can animate that machine so that their clients can understand, oh, that's how that works. This is why this one's different, and so on. So, we're at the very start of the journey of spatial computing, even though it's been around for a while. in rethinking how we can look at, again, address those needs and behaviors in a different way with this high fidelity tool that can understand the world around us.
So, where do you think the space is heading?
I think what we'll see is this divergence of devices. I think some people think that, something like the Apple Vision Pro will meet in the middle with a set of Ray-Bans, the Meta Ray-Bans, and we'll have something that does everything. But I actually think we'll have a better enhanced set of glasses that most people, as in the broader mass market consumers, might buy to wear for most of the day. They will give you a bit of AR, not a huge field of view, but enough to overlay interesting digital content on your world that's really contextually based. And at the other end, you'll have, and that's sort of like the Apple Watch for the eyes, but at the other end, you'll still have a desktop computing type experience with a device like the Apple Vision Pro, where you can be fully immersed if you choose to, or it's a higher end capability, it's a bigger field of view, higher resolution, all those types of things. So I think we'll have two ends of devices for consumers, and then for getting spatial computing work done, whether that's designing 3D assets and collaboration and things like that. And I think certainly, in terms of the glasses, we're seeing a lot of experimentation at the moment. So I was over in Santa Monica a couple of months ago to get the new Snap Spectacles for the launch of the Snap Spectacles 5. They're glasses only. There's no battery pack off them. The battery's built in. They've got a nice, quite a good resolution image. It's nowhere near the same as the Apple Vision Pro, but they're just glasses that you put on, and they can detect your hand gestures. They can detect the planes, like as in a table or a wall and things like that, through computer vision, not through LiDAR. And then we just saw the other month as well, Meta show off the future prototype of the Orion glasses, which are, a future state where it's at the moment glasses and a puck and this really EMG device, which can detect your gestures using the electrical signals that run through your wrist. It's like a little wristband. So those in combination can create this amazing spatial computing experience, but it's nowhere near a releasable product just yet. So we can see all these companies, and Google are doing some, licensing Magic Leap stuff and have got a team working on an operating system. So we think they'll probably have something by next year. We can see all these major technology companies all moving towards spatial computing in some form or another at the moment. So it's definitely going to be in our future.
Yeah, cool. And now I want to talk a little bit about AI because, that's every second conversation. So how's AI changing the way you design experiences? Obviously, we talked a lot about the spatial computing side and devices. How's AI changing things up for you?
Yeah, I think there's two different aspects to that. There's the services that our clients are creating and using AI to enable those. So we were lucky enough to work on a tablet recently, which was AI enhanced for young adults who are neurodiverse, and being an intelligent agent for them, and a range of other projects. So there's the ways that our clients are using it, and if we earlier in the conversation, I talked about how once we had computers, we got the internet, and it enabled these different capabilities. And I see AI being the same. We use these devices, we use them in different ways, and it will enable some different interactions, but they might be fundamentally the same devices, just super powered essentially. So from a designing with AI, as AI as a design partner, essentially, I think that the road's going to be quite slow. Like we've seen a lot of things which have tried to do things like Figma, etc., and maybe not achieved everything that was promised. And we're in that stage of evaluating things and trying to understand where does it actually add value in the design workflow, the UX design workflow, and where is it still not quite right, where it takes more effort to use it than to not use it. And I think this is going to have a bit of an impact, obviously, on the professions and the careers of UX researchers and designers as well. Of, if I use a tool at the moment, what we do is we tend to use AI research tools or design tools in parallel. So for exploratory purposes, we'll go, okay, well, I'm going to go through all this custom research data and I'm going to analyze the themes through the research that we did. But then in parallel, I might run an AI to do that process as well. But I can detect, because I've been doing this for 25 years, where things might be going wrong more so with that AI still, whereas somebody coming into the profession might not see that in the same way to start with. And it'll be interesting to see how do those people develop their skill set if they don't have the same exposure. But it's like every, career path, the technology changes the nature of the career and the nature of the tasks that we're doing, our role in those, the AI's role in those. So it'll all evolve over time. I'm not against it. I'm not looking for every opportunity to include it at this point, but we'll work out where it makes sense and how it best fits in.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly interesting, isn't it? Like I say, it's an experimental phase, particularly from the design point of view. Like hearing things about synthetic, users and testing and stuff like that, which is interesting. And you're like, I'm sure that works, in some instances if you need to do things really quickly, but does it give you the real human insight that you talked about earlier? That Indonesian example you talking about the mothers, does it give you that type of example? That's where it might not quite go that deep, but still would be pretty handy.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to a point in UX where we're starting to have more an appreciation for the history, and as UX design gets more nuanced, as we try to create services that are more nuanced for our clients, they needed to be founded in a deeper understanding, both of the customer needs and behaviors, as we've talked about, but also the history and the science behind user experience and human computer interaction. I think is coming more to the fore than it potentially has for quite a number of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, it's time to wrap up. It's been so great to chat, Oliver. You've given us a ton of great insights into the world of spatial computing and UX designing for the future. Thanks so much for joining me.
It's been a pleasure, Justin. Thanks very much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in. Some amazing insights from a great design leader. If you found this insightful, make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button now, as we have some great episodes coming up. And if you have any questions or would like to chat, reach out to us at customersmarts.co. Catch you next time.